Hello, everyone. Welcome to the President-Vice President debates. I love it. Thank you. I'm Sophia Francis, serving as both the Elections Committee Chair and the Chief Justice of the Judicial Review Board. Thank you. These debates are an opportunity where our student population can truly be informed on those they're electing and for candidates to expand on their aims, visions, or objectives for their term of office. So I'm going to go into what the roles are for each president and vice president. So the president's role is that of the executive leader. They serve to make sure that ASPSU maintains retention and strong internal correspondence while working on projects they might have as their personal goals. They create the goals that the entire ASPSU student government shall act upon and support. The president works to promote and enrich the student's experience at Portland State University. The vice president's role is to make sure that ASPSU maintains retention and strong internal correspondence while working on projects that they might have as their personal goals. The vice president works hard to promote and enrich the student's experience of Portland State University. So today we have Cam Rodriguez and Eva Sheehan moderating our debate. Following the debates, we'll open the floor for audience questions, and you can either ask your questions directly or jot them down on the materials available at the check-in table. So each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer their question and 1 minute for rebuttal. When you do rebuttal, please buzz your buzzers and wait for your fellow candidate to finish answering their question. So we do have 2 out of the 3 president-vice president tickets here today. Jordan and Angelica from the Voices of Action slate pulled out of the debates this morning and will not be participating today. So I will now hand it off to our candidates to introduce yourselves. Ulfa, if you'd like to start, just your name, your slate, your pronouns, and why you're running.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Ulfa Tlaiba. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm part of the PSU for You slate, and I'm your vice presidential candidate for next year. I think a big part of the reason I'm running is just because I found so much passion within my role in ASPSU this year. I joined ASPSU for the first time this year, and I've started so many projects and initiatives, and I've met so many wonderful people within this organization, and I feel like we just have so much work left to do and so much left to accomplish, and I would really like to be here next year to do that, and that's why I'm running to be your vice president again.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brady Rowland. My pronouns are she, her, and I am your presidential candidate on the PSU for You slate. I'd say the biggest reason I'm running is because I see so much potential in a future of ASPSU with the team that we've built, and I think the greatest asset to our team has been trust, and that trust is just such a good relationship that we've had throughout the year in ASPSU, and it's just not something I want to risk losing. I think we have a lot of momentum, and we'll have a lot of momentum going forward if we continue the work that we started this year as a group in ASPSU.
My name is Nolan Bilenga. I'm a 26-year-old master's student. My pronouns are he, him, and I am running for president because I think that my experience and certain things that I've done, that I could bring a type of advocacy for the young people, get their voices heard and recognized. Outside of ASPSU, they brought me on news and whatnot and such like that so that I could be some sort of voice for young people. And I think we could bring that to the table of some of those higher ups in the schools, bring some legitimacy, and bring real representation so that we're not made invisible like they like to make a lot of folks.
My name's Dave Hartless, he, him, and I'm running for vice president because I like to see things get done. I was on the board of trustees in my undergrad at my old school, and in one physical school year, I was able to get 3 things that actually helped the school for the better changed. I don't believe in doing long-term things. Students are here for 4 years. We don't have 2 years to get things done, and nobody has a chance to actually feel that experience. It should be immediate and going forward, not just the long-term picture to get things done down the road. We should focus on what we can do for students now and help them, and that's why I'm kind of here, is I want to show students that what you say, do, think matters, and that this university has a tendency to look at students like lesser than, and we're not. And we should all have the opportunity to go, no, we're literally the reason why you're here. Let's have a conversation. And I want to show people how to have that conversation in a way to actually get things done. That's why I'm running for vice president.
Thank you all for your introductions. As Sophia mentioned, my name's Cameron, and this is Eva, and we'll be moderating today's debates. Let's start with the first question. Could each president, vice president ticket explain how their slate differs from the other slates?
All right. I would say that our slate differs from the other slate because we're incumbent. While we do have two new members on our slate that have not been in ASPSU before, we we do have a lot of experience between our group, and we know our roles so thoroughly thus far that I think that's what separates our slate from the other slates. I will say that for the slate that isn't represented today, there are incumbents on that slate. However, for the roles that they're running for, they do not have experience in. And the presidential candidate himself also does not have experience in ASPSU. So I would say that what sets us apart is our experience.
Yeah, I'll say, I love Brady. I just want to point out that as incumbent, she is not currently incumbent as president. It's Yusuf. I think Yusuf's done a great job. And for our slate, I'd say what makes us different is that we're running as two. We're not tied to anything in particular. And we are the bilingual Heartless slate, and we have experience that is in the professional realms of doing government and working on certain things. My running partner, Dave, has been on the board of trustees of Central Washington University. I've served as an intern for U.S. Senator Merkley. I've ran a congressional campaign, a campaign for U.S. House of Representatives. And I think that we're able to really bring strong advocacy to the young people so that people like President Cudd will take us very, very seriously.
Something I wanted to add about what makes our slate, what makes us stand out, and what I believe makes us so different is I think just the passion and the work ethic within the group of people that we have. I've seen throughout the year, through the people I've worked with and through the people I've met that have recently joined our slate, they just genuinely care. They genuinely care about students. They genuinely care about PSU. And they put that care and that passion and they channel it into their work and into their accomplishments, into what they've done so far and the goals that they have for next year. And I think that that's how you see results is through the mix of those two things, the passion and the work ethic.
Thank you. For the next question, what items on your opponent's agenda do you support and what do you oppose?
I think, can I start this one out? The one that I heard that I'm curious about, I think it needs to be looked into deeper, was an idea to take funds for transit from students. So this idea was to make it so that nobody had to pay for TriMet or transit. I think it sounds like a great idea. But based on what I heard listening to debates the other day, it may end up causing some students to take out more student loans in order to provide for the funds of all the students to have transit. That was unclear to us in the last debate. I think it needs to be looked into further. It's not that I don't want to do that. I think that if it doesn't do that, it sounds like a great idea. If it does do that, then we need to halt it and figure out how to make it work for every single student out there.
I would like to mention that with our transit idea, the idea is to incentivize students to take transit because we do have issues with the amount of parking and how much parking costs on our campus. But currently, students have to pay $100 a term for a TriMet pass, which results in $300 per year. However, with our idea and what our system would be, there would be no additional cost to students. It would be a system that looks at financial aid, and it costs, the number is higher for those who receive greater financial aid, but it goes from their financial aid. So essentially, it's not costing students any extra, and it comes out of financial aid. And sorry, I lost my thought. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it.
So, as the point of it coming from financial aid, the question is what type of financial aid. So if you end up with a grant or something like that, and the school is deemed that, hey, we're going to pay for the entire thing, no matter what the cost that we're adding to people's financial needs is, then I think that's fine if it's covered by the school. But if it ends up being a thing where it's like somebody, their financial aid is covered by student loans. So let's say, me here, I have, you're adding to my student loans that I end up having to pay back in the future. And I think that would be a very serious concern to a lot of students to say, well, I'm covering, TriMet costs, but let's say I don't use the TriMet. And I'm adding on costs to my financial aid that I have to pay back in the future. Maybe that adds interest or whatnot. I just think it needs to be talked about.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very valid concern. And going into this whole transit idea, and with like the meetings we've had with administration, we've made it very clear that we don't want any additional costs to students, whether that's future costs or current costs. And so the system is a percentage-based system. So let's say, for example, financial aid, your FAFSA covers 50% of your tuition costs, and that's specifically the costs that are fully covered, so not loans. Fully financial aid, that is money that goes to cover your account, not money you have to pay back. So let's say you get 50% of that coverage, then 50% of the price of the pass will be added to your account. So again, fully covered by funds that you do not have to pay back. And this is a system that we didn't just come up with on our own. We worked with administration that are involved in this process. So it's not something that's
going to cost more to students.
Thank you so much for that. The PSU for You slates has put intention into requesting. One second.
Sorry, the question had to be crossed out a little bit and refunctioned.
This part's not a question. Has put attention requests cites the election violations have occurred by the other slate during this process. Could you describe your experience going through this if given the opportunity? Is there anything you would have approached differently?
Not put myself in a position to get in the first place. All these violations are really little things of trying to push the envelope, and why? What does this solve trying to get 2 inches closer to a doorway that's 50 feet? What's the difference between 50 feet and 52 feet? 24 inches. It's really not that. And people they're doing all these little petty things, and it's just like, what are you trying to achieve with it? It's like it doesn't help out, the students who are going to vote for you. If anything, it shows what kind of administration you're going to have. You're going to push the envelope, and then when you don't like something, you can go try to point fingers at somebody else. It doesn't show me a sign of leadership. It shows me a sign of somebody being petty and not taking this job seriously, but want to continue the position that they're currently in to hold whatever status they think they have right now.
Yes, I would just like to add on to that PSU for You has only submitted 2 attention requests, which were both resulting in violations to the Voices of Action slate, whereas Voices of Action has submitted 6 or 7 attention requests against us, with only one of those being resulting in a violation. So just like Dave said, I would like to just mention that it does come across as petty, and it does show what kind of administration that the other slate that isn't represented here is trying to accomplish, I guess. I would just like to mention that PSU for You's attention requests were both valid, whereas Voices of Action have been submitting relentless requests against us that have all, except for one, resulted in no violations. So,
I just want to make it very clear to anybody who might be watching that's not here that we are not Voices for Action. They are not watching. They're not at this debate. We are the Bilinga Heartless ticket. We're not the ones that are putting out those attention requests.
I just want to add a couple things about this, and I'm going to keep it as brief as possible because these attention requests are not something that I believe is valuable to this conversation. So yes, Voices of Action put 6 attention requests against us, and only one of them resulted in a violation. The one that resulted in a violation was that we had our posters up on a board we were not supposed to have our posters up on. So we put the 2 attention requests against Voice of Action after we got that result because they had had their posters up on that exact board previously to submitting the attention request. They removed theirs down and then submitted the attention request against us. And so the reason we did it back was just in the name of fairness and the name of we were not doing it to be petty, just to clarify that. We did not want to have to do that. We were advised to do that. And we don't like the whole attention request game, and we wish it never happened.
You are and have been currently a part of the ASPSU body, right? And you still chose to break a rule that you knew was in place. That kind of gives you a good idea of what kind of administration could be ran right there. If you see somebody else do it, I'm getting the impression that you feel like it's okay if you do it instead of being in integrity and morals and taking a higher ground and not doing it. But you chose to do it anyways, knowing that it could be a violation or that it was a violation.
So the violation that we received was for placing our posters up on a bulletin board that was outside of the ASPSU office, which is considered a polling station. This year, everybody votes through their email, whereas in the past, there were polling stations. And that's just something that hasn't been updated from the elections manual. So as soon as we realized, we took our posters down. Well, we couldn't because the campus was closed, but as soon as we were able to get back on campus, we took our posters down. But it was simply just a overlook of the rules because we forgot that the polling station rule was still in place.
I'll just add, I will say, I think that there's always a place where folks can overlook stuff, and I think that should not be held against anybody that's not continuing to do those things.
We're going to move on to the next question. So compared to the PSU for You slate and the Bilinga Heartless slate, respectively, have received no formal endorsements from student groups. Do you feel if elected your slate would have the backing of student groups to be able to accomplish your goals of student engagement?
I'd say completely we would. The thing about it is I haven't been in ASPSU since 2020. It's been quite some time since I've worked with those groups, but I have in the past. But even outside of ASPSU, I know some of the folks that are in those groups. I built relationships with them. And it's one of those things where when you're in a campaign and there's endorsements and you haven't talked to folks in a long time or you may not know some folks, you've got to build those relationships. And that's part of what would happen if we get into the office. Is building the relationships. I've managed to build relationships with people that are outside of ASPSU. I built relationships with county commissioners before, with senators before, with folks that are in, elected office. And in 2020, if we're talking about endorsements, this race I haven't been endorsed for president, but running for House of Representatives, I was endorsed by both Senator Merkley and Senator Wyden. So I think it wouldn't be too difficult to build those relationships and get in there and work with people.
Just to rebuttal that partially, I would just maybe point out and clarify that these relationships that we've built have been throughout the entire year, and it has taken so much effort through the Senate liaison system that that Yusuf started. The groups that we have received endorsements from, we have working relationships with each and every one of them, but that's not the limit of who the groups we have relationships with. We have relationships with nearly every group on campus through the Senate liaison system, and many of our senators that are on our slate also work with these organizations on a daily basis. For example, Nehemiah Wilson, he works with OIS, Organization of International Students, quite frequently. I'll cut it off there, but we work with them quite frequently.
Awesome, thank you. How do you think the PSU administration handled the library protest? What, if anything, would you have advised the administration to do differently? Go ahead.
Get a new PR team, first off. I just want to get that out of the way there. And with that being said, what happened to the library is a tragedy at the end of the day. And that part right there that kills me. And so the school could have handled it differently of not waiting days to go talk with people. They let it build up and then they let it fester and they let it get to a point to where it was almost out of control when the president did show up. They could have showed up. This protest about these actions have been going on in the park since October, November, if I'm not mistaken. I remember seeing a couple about them and it started off really small and it got bigger and it got bigger. And yet everybody chose to ignore it. And when at that point, the university should have saw that this is gaining momentum and let's see if we can have a conversation about this and let things and get some clarity and get some more understanding on things and how these things work. And I never saw that until 3 days into it. And then we're seeing emails about how it's about the president and not about the students anymore. And it's about the university. It's not about what students were hearing or what they wanted. And people are at fault on all levels of this. And I'm not going to try to say anybody was perfect and that everybody was wrong. I'm not doing that because there's no right, no wrong in this whole situation. All I know is that our library is now shut down until fall quarter. And that part right there kind of really hurts me. And students' voices do matter, and the administration could have handled this far differently, and they chose not to. And they chose to let it get to a big level where it's out of control first before taking the initiative steps needed to talk with it. That's kind of how I see the whole situation.
Exactly. And to add, do I just have the 20 seconds left? Or?
I'll add a minute.
Okay. To add, there were reports at one point talking about how things like archives and whatnot have been taken from the library, from local news. And the local news was even trying to bait students such as myself into saying that, or condemning students that were trying to have their voices heard. And, I wouldn't let them, get me to do that by any means. I tried to stick up for students the best I could on live news. But those reports about things being taken from the library ended up not being true. And you wonder, where were those reports coming from? I'd heard from people, and I can't verify this, but I did hear from people that it was from the president that was given those reports, and it ended up not being true. So there is definitely a better way it could have been handled. I think at the very beginning, President Cudd tried to come in there and test the waters out, and it just did not work out for her.
And I also wanted to add that the administration just needs to start operating with both honesty and transparency. Those two things are very different. You can be transparent without being honest, and I believe that they're both right now. To add on to what Nolan was just talking about regarding the archives, in an email that President Cudd said, she did mention that there were some irreplaceable damages from within the library of those archives. And that was prior to the library report coming out, which stated that there was no such damages. So all the damages that did happen to the library are to equipment or things that could be fixed, essentially. And I'm not saying that that makes it okay. I'm just saying that we should look at whose fault it was that happened, who had been ignoring students for months, and who let it escalate to that point. And also just focus a little bit more about all the other peaceful protests that have happened on campus, the countless since and before the library incident.
I would also like to mention that the police showing up was the first time that it got violent on our campus. The protesters, yes, there was damage to the library. Destruction of property, however, is not violence. And violence only came about our campus when the police showed up. And the decision to show up was Ann Cudd's, to have them show up was Ann Cudd's. So the way I would have handled that differently in the role of president is I would have liked to communicate with Ann Cudd more about the dangers of putting PPV on students when there really was no need to. We could have sent de-escalators, CVI groups in there, etc. But also with the library archives, yeah, my friend Luca's mom works in the library, and I had her do an interview with OPB, which is why the report came out. And I'm just grateful that the archives are okay.
Last one.
Thank you.
I just want to add on, that because we're talking about the damage and whatnot to from the protests and what was happening. I think at the end of the day is, regardless of what happened, we cannot, ignore the injustice that students are bringing to light, and we have to enable free speech and look at the bigger picture at the end of the day.
Thank you. So the next question, in what specific ways do you think ASPSU can impact the student experience at PSU? What role can you play in this process?
I think that the main role that ASPSU can play in students' experience at PSU is through engagement and advocacy. So I think that we play a really big role in being the direct link between students and the administration. We have those connections. Just the fact that we're in ASPSU gives us just a little bit more credibility to have our voices heard, to get our emails answered, to get meetings set up. And so it is our job to be able to seek out students, listen to their needs, and be able to connect them with the people that they need to be connected to, or be their voices if they're not able to voice it for themselves. And I think that is the main reason why student government exists, and part of the main reason why I'm in it as well. And the other part of that is the engagement aspect. And that's a big part of what we've been working on through our Senate liaison system as well. Just like connect student groups and student organizations are a huge part of Portland State University. There are so many of them out there, and a lot of them get really good engagement with students because they form communities through those organizations. And we want to be able to connect those organizations to each other and connect those communities to each other and just create more engagement and vibrance on our campus. It can be a lot more difficult because we aren't a traditional campus. We're commuter schools, and we have people who work full-time jobs or 2 or 3 jobs, and just doing whatever we can to make their time on campus just a little bit more enjoyable or a little bit easier in any way that we can.
Did anybody buzz? Did anybody buzz?
Was that it?
I did buzz, no.
All right.
Well, thank you for all those answers. Now we'd like to open the floor for audience questions. If anyone in the audience would like to ask a question, please form a line behind the microphone located to the gray column on our right. Oops. Oops.
Please come up here. Oh,
Never
we
mind.
have written down questions, and those get priority.
You want to go?
Oh, yeah. Shoot. For Bilinga, are you still running for Congress?
I am.
Awesome. Any rebuttals to that?
How do you manage to balance that as well as this election?
Oh boy, I tell you what, it is perhaps the most difficult thing I've ever tried to do. If I were to win that race, I think I told Zach the other day that I'd take all the ASPU up there with me.
That would be awesome.
All right. This next one, when facing strong opposition, what gives you confidence?
I'll tackle this. I've been in the midst of a lot of different things during my life. I set up Black Lives Matter protests in Pendleton, Oregon in 2020. And I'll tell you what, when you have a bunch of very conservative folks putting up posters with your face on it saying that I'm bringing 2,000 Antifa members to Pendleton to scare them, and then showing up to our protests with AR-15s, pointed at our faces. That actually happened. I'm not kidding. They brought Confederate flags and all kinds of stuff, and it was like a little bit of a time lapse in history. I felt like I'd gone back 70 years. And I didn't expect it, but I realized in that moment that there was an ability to lower tension, and that most of the folks that you're around, and when you get close enough to them, they're just people just like you are. And we managed to bring a whole bunch of different people together. And I think that idea of trying to build bridges, what I've tried to do, has worked out in my favor, and really given me confidence to kind of just go and do anything that I choose to do.
I don't do anything I'm not fully passionate about. I've lived by this rule my whole life. If I don't love it, I won't do it anymore. I've done that with jobs. I did that with school. I chased a degree that people told me was worthless. I worked at a radio station where they said nobody should listen to me, but I got national awards. I got nominated for a national award. I was told don't apply for it because you're too old. I was on the board of trustees. I chase things that I'm confident in. If it's scary and it's big and it's bad, even better. That's my confidence of I'm doing this because this is my passion. This is stuff that's going to punch me in the gut, and it hurts so much that when it wears off, I want that to come back. That's my driving force. Is the bigger the better. It's only big on the surface. Once you get inside there, you realize that eating the elephant isn't that bad if you just start at the tail and then you don't try to eat the whole thing in one bite. So I want to keep going after things that I'm told not to do because it's big and scary, or I'm not supposed to because of my age. And I'm like, well, why not? Says who? There's no book for that, and that's what I keep approaching life.
I would say, is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I would say what gives me confidence when I am facing opposition to something I'm doing is the people that are around me, the people who I know will have my back, and I can say with my whole heart that my slate and the current ASPSU administration just always has my back. For example, I've been a gun violence prevention activist for the past 6 years, ever since Parkland happened. And coming from Colorado, where mass gun violence is just so prevalent, it's something that is just so near to my heart. And I have faced so much opposition on that issue from people on a daily basis. And every time that I feel beat down from that, I just go to the people who I know have my back, and they always lift me back up, and I always know that what I'm fighting for is correct, and what I'm fighting for is saving lives, and just having those people there to remind you that you are doing good is what gives me confidence when I face opposition.
I just want to add on to all three of those wonderful answers, by the way. I think a really, really big thing for me as well is passion and just bringing my heart and soul into everything that I do, and fully, when I'm passionate about something, I will put everything into it. But I think what's really important as well to go with passion is commitment. And so if I've committed to something, I will see it through. There's nothing that I hate more than being that person that does not show up or lets someone down. And sometimes you have to be able to do the hard things to build your confidence or fake your confidence, because people need you to show up and people need you to be there, whether you want to do it anymore or not. And I think that as a leader, you're not always making decisions for yourself. You have to think about everyone else that it could impact as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to open it to the floor?
Yeah, can we open it to the audience?
Does anybody want to ask questions in the audience? Nobody? There we go. Come on up here. Come to the table.
You got the best questions.
Here you go.
Good to see you. Hi, everyone. My name is Mitch Brown. I'm one of your military veteran students here. I go here on the GI Bill. Been around this week. Luckily came in, got to hear the senator speak, and came here today. And one thing is, like the last question y'all answered, you can always find fault, and y'all are on the spot right now, so it's kind of hard, when you're trying to actually figure out maybe something you're trying to say for the first time in a way, especially in a pressured instance. But I think one of the things I'm looking for in a leader is someone that, and it's hard to do, but someone that is going to serve, and making sure that how you find your confidence and how you go about your day isn't something that people can manipulate and turn your energy against you. So like everyone, so it's like, hey, it's like if you're going for somebody, you know, it's like, hey, I go to the people that support me. It's like, you got to be careful because those can be echo chambers. You can start hearing things that mirroring, and you're like, hey, that's not really helping me in these tough places. You know, making sure that you're showing up for the right reasons, not be just because you're pressured to, because you can do things that you don't mean to do. You know, it's like, because it's like, hey, that's inappropriate, and being able to think like that, you know, and that's just, again, it's like, hey, service to somebody. Being tough, you know, or just saying, hey, I'm going to do it because, you know, it's the wrong thing. It's like, I can get you to do almost anything, you know, with that kind of attitude. You know, so it's, you got to take the you out of it, I think. And so for us, it's like, how are you going to serve the role that serves the people that's electing you? And when our communication fails, like it has at the library and we've lost our spaces, how are you going to pull us together that's more than an email so we can have these conversations and figure out that, hey, y'all are agreeing on the same thing, so hopefully after today or the votes, y'all work together because y'all can tackle the library and help us get the narrative straight of what's happening and what's not with these people that are represented as our leaders as presidents right now at Portland State University. So how can we open up communication, especially right now in these times, to where we can get together? We're not pressured, we don't have a lot of time, but we've lost our spaces.
I'll say it's to kind of, I'll come back to exactly what you're saying. At the beginning of the cycle, when we started this election stuff, and Yusuf was originally running on the PSU for You slate, and I think he ended up not, and that's where Brady took the opportunity to come into that position to do that. We did get together, and we all got each other's phone numbers, and we were talking to each other, and we wanted to build, you know, that relationship regardless of what happened, to say, you know, we tackle these things together. And I do think that's a great point, is to say, how can we come together and continue on trying to represent folks? So for me is, you know, I'm all about trying to bring people together and build bridges with folks. And regardless of what happens, you know, I totally committed to saying that I would stand with Brady, stand with Jordan, stand with whoever, and try to fix what's going on. We could come together and still do those things. And I'm sure that they'd be willing to do the same at the end of the day. And in terms of the library and getting the narrative straight, I think we need to, and we have been, I think we really got to utilize Vanguard and going out through their social media and trying to have ASPSU partner to be able to have us on there and talking and saying that this is you know, our derogative and what we're talking about particularly. So I think it really is just making those connections and being committed to doing those things regardless. It's not so much about us, like you said, it's about what the bigger picture is.
It's not about me at the end of the day. It's about this. At the end of the day, let's face reality. I'm a straight white male. When I leave PSU, I'm going to be fine. Not everybody can say that. So I might as well use a platform that I have to help people that don't have a voice, to bring people up who feel like they're not being heard, and they see this body as a way to get their voice heard and their needs, you know, heard from somebody, and get something out there. That's why I'm doing this, is to give somebody who doesn't have a voice, doesn't know how to use it, to give them a platform to come and express their needs and wants and, you know, issues that they have, and maybe offer some guidance and some help along the way, and then go out there and see and say, I don't know if I can fix this for you, but let's see what we can figure out together, and let's go have a conversation. Because if I'm not gonna sit here and make empty promises that as vice president I'm gonna conquer the university and Ann Cud's gonna end up changing her whole tone, that's unrealistic, and I'm not gonna try to act like that's something that I can say or do. What I can do is listen to the students, take these needs there, and then continue on with showing that we're here, we're not going away, and I'm gonna keep bringing problems up, because if there's smoke, there's fire, and eventually, if enough little things happen, people can have opportunity actually to get some change instead of just running around being upset.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your question, and thank you so much for your service. I really appreciate it, and I know we all do. I want to bring up a point that you had about the emails. That's been something that we've been discussing within our slate quite frequently, And the lack of transparency, but the constant cycling of these emails is something that I don't think students appreciate. And from what I'm hearing from students, there's just a complete lack of, internally, we call the 4th Avenue building, the admin building, the power of tower. And I think they sit up there and they don't really realize how the way they act and the way that they email us is affecting the way that people think about them. And just like as a representative of students, I think the best way to approach that is to be so direct with Ann Cudd and her team that they know exactly what students think, and that we can open up a conversation to students and the administration, because so far we have yet to see that. But I think ASPSU would definitely be advocating for that open conversation.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No more.
I had a little example to give.
Cut off.
Cut off. Wow.
We have other questions. Okay.
All right.
If we don't have any other audience questions, we have bonus questions.
All right. Nice.
Come on over. Take this mic.
The police arrested 30 people. 6 of those were students. When they swept the building, they made a lot of warnings to leave, and they gave people chances. And there were 12 holdouts, and 4 of those were students. What's your opinion on that?
Thank you. Who wants to take that? Brady.
Okay. My opinion on the holdouts themselves, I think they're very strong-willed people who must very much believe in the cause that they stand up for. But I would say that to maybe ignore the warnings of the police was not the best decision. However, these students truly do care about what they believe in, and if that was their way of showing that, then I can't blame them for that, because they are very passionate about what they believe in, and I'm right there with them, but just not in the same way. But I think a lot of us can resonate with that strong feeling that this is an issue that a lot of people need to pay attention to.
I want to bring your point about how there's 6 out of 30 students that's reported or 6 out of 30 people that were reported as students. I think at the end of the day is Portland's a place that has a lot of protests and a lot of folks that come from the community to advocate for things that they care about. As a student, I fully support students 100%, but outside community folks, I'm not capable of advocating for in the same kind of way, since this would be a student body government. I think that the law process, I'm not capable of being involved in. I wouldn't advocate against anybody in particular. My stance is going to be strictly saying, let's focus on the problem and let the legal system handle itself, because I really don't have control over the legal system. But at the end of, at the same time, is we have to keep our eyes on, the ability to maintain free speech for students too. So the advocation it's going to be centered around students if I'm president. I think, like I said, it's really hard to go out of your way to advocate for folks that aren't students. It's not a great look for ASPSU. I completely get the cause, and I don't condemn anybody in particular. I just that's really where my stance is on it. I think we've got to be slow to condemn folks and focus on the issues that are trying to be brought to light.
I think my opinion on that is just like my first thought when I heard about what had happened to those students is, where did we go wrong for them to have felt the need to be in that situation? They should not have been there. No one should have been there, because we shouldn't have let it get to that point. They shouldn't have felt the need to make a stance like that, to put their lives in danger, to put their education at stake in order to advocate for a cause that they're extremely passionate about. And that's, honestly, that's my opinion on that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, get over here.
Zach, give us a good question.
Come on, Zach.
Thank you, Cam. Hi, everyone. Great job so far. It's so nice to see you all up there having a really intelligent and compassionate conversation. So thank you for being role models for us. My question is about if you win, and you take the seat in September of next year or this year, and then you run do your leadership thing for the whole year. Like, what at the end would you be like? Hope that you said that you won for students. Does the question make sense, right? Thinking now June of 2025, you've been in office for a year with your team and with your whole student body. Like, what would you have hoped to get win for students? Thanks.
Who buzz first?
I buzz mine.
Go.
Here's what I want to do, and Dave will add on to this after I'm done here, but I want to blow up ASPSU, and not in a negative fashion, right? Not in a negative way. What I want to do is blow it up to like social media type of blow up. I want ASPSU to be a social media force that other schools can look to as a model of how to run their government. And so if we can build an enormous social media presence, I think that puts pressure on the school to have to actually listen to the student body government. The YouTube channel, for example, ASPSU, it's posted, I want to say it's like one video in the last 3 years or so. I think Instagram has been doing pretty well, and there have been things that have been improved. But if we could go on TikTok and get something viral and then just blow up and start building our communication channels in that sort of way, then students are going to be way more connected, and the school is going to be, they're going to have more pressure to actually listen to what's happening. I'll tell you in my own congressional race, not to bring that into this particularly, but I've said, I want to say this because the news has completely lied about all of this. It's ridiculous, to be honest, but I've said from the start, dark money, all wear in elections. That's been every single thing that I've said from the beginning of the campaign cycle, and it wasn't until one of the other candidates who is backed by big money came out and said it that the news started reporting on it. But at the end of the day, is me saying it continuously, it forced some channels to start looking at that issue. And even though I'm not getting credit for it, there is people talking about it, and it's starting to bring a little bit of change around the topic. And I think that's really where we have to be with ASPSU, is keep advocating and build those social media platforms to put pressure. And even at the end of the day, if we don't get 100% credit, we might be able to start pushing that change.
Is it my turn now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. One thing I want to do, I want to change the rules so we can get students to register to vote on campus. I believe that is the most powerful tool that we have in a democracy is the ability to vote. And I think that we should be able to have voting booths that we can sign people up to vote right there on the spot and just get that part over when done with and figure out how that works. Other thing I would love to accomplish as a goal of, if I was to be the vice president, is we have a radio station on campus. Why isn't it playing in every single hall? It's in here, it's in Smith, right? We can hear it here like when you walk in a hallway, but when you walk in another building or you walk in another room, you hear somebody's Spotify playlist, and it's usually, "Hello Barbie, let's go party." So that's a different story. Anyways, though, what I'm trying to say is that we have a communication issue here at PSU that I see can be easily fixed. I would take my experience of when I was a DJ at my old school, where my whole idea was to get information to the campus. And if I could do that, then it's on you to use it or not, but we can't say we didn't try. And I believe that we have a radio station that we can get all through to here and start working on every single building on campus. And that's just the voice of students going all over campus. And that's all I got to say. Yep, sorry.
Yeah.
I have two main overarching goals for kind of what I want to accomplish by the end of my next term of office. I think I'll know I've accomplished the first one if I can walk up to a random student, someone I've never seen before, ask them, do you know what ASPSU is? And they have an answer for me. I think that's the biggest part of the battle, because how can you represent students if they don't know you exist, if they don't know you're a resource for them? How can you find out what their needs are? And so that's the biggest part. And I think the second part is when they do come to me with those needs is I know what to do. I know the channels to take. I know who I need to reach out to, who I need to connect them to, what resource they need, or what resource we don't have that I need to advocate for. So being able to find those answers or just have those answers for them. And then I also just wanted, if you could clarify for us what that first point that you were saying about the voting, I just
Getting students registered to vote on campus, like be able to have that ability. Students can we can have the paper. I was told that there's a rule saying that they can't register students to vote on campus. Okay. That's what I was told, and so I would like to get that part changed.
So there's no rule that prohibits us from registering people to vote on campus. You do need to probably get a training to register people to vote, but it's also easy to do it online. However, I'm in the Oregon Student Association on the Council of Legislative Advocates, and we're doing a Get Out the Vote this fall term. So that's definitely something that's already in the books. But there is no rule that prohibits ASPSU from registering people to vote.
I'll just add, even if there's no rule, that's what we'll just start doing, is we'll get people registered to vote.
Yeah, through OSA, there's a channel. It's very, very easy, and Nehemiah and I are both in OSA, one of the senators on our slate. So, yeah, we definitely will be getting out the vote.
Okay. Anybody else behind me? Everybody look behind.
Someone's got a question out there.
Oh, we have more questions. We just
Yeah.
want to make sure people have their own little questions. You want me to do that one? Okay.
Oh,
No, you can do it.
Okay. So our first bonus question, the ASPSU president and vice president are in charge of hiring for open positions within ASPSU as they become available. How would you go about finding qualified candidates for ASPSU during the year? It's like tongue-tied.
So I was actually the way I joined Senate was because there was an open position and I applied. So there is an ASPSU application when positions do open. And the process that happened with me is I went in and was interviewed by the Senate Speaker, Tucker, and essentially we just had an interview and Tucker relayed the information, my answers, onto the president and vice president, and then they selected candidates from that. But I would say that to get a quality candidate, I would like to meet them. I would like to change the process so that the president and vice president are the ones interviewing, and maybe along with the Senate Speaker. But definitely, I think to get a quality candidate, you have to hear someone's voice and hear what they have to say to your face, not just through application.
I want to say I completely agree with having the president and vice president involved in the hiring process for that. I talked to Yusuf at one point about this, and I think that looking to the past administrations like Yusuf and talking to them about who do you think, to get some more insight on who should be hired. And I want to open it up to students that are outside of the realm of ASPSU at all, or as well. So I think part of it is going to be really trying to get the word out that there are positions that are available so we can get the best candidates possible. I think there's a lot of great people that are in ASPSU, but if we can bring more people from other groups and whatnot, then I think it'll be fantastic. It'll be fantastic. So, also, because Mitch brought up at one point, the Veterans Resource Center, and that this school started out as a veteran school in a lot of ways. I think it would be important to have somebody from that community that's represented as well.
So to kind of add on to that, and excuse me if like the HR business major in me comes out a little bit, but in order for you to have a diverse candidate pool, you have to really be critical about the ways you are advertising the job position and who it's reaching and the avenues that you're doing with that. And so I think there's definitely a lot of room for growth and work compared to ASPSU's current hiring system. I mean, to put it into perspective, the only reason I found out what ASPSU was and joined it was because I knew people who were in ASPSU. So the reach isn't very far. And I think a really powerful way to do that is A, through social media, because you don't know who you're going to reach through there, but B, through targeted advertising, putting flyers up in or around or near CRCs in different buildings where different majors might hang out or different community groups, and just making sure the reach goes as far as possible in order to attract those groups, in order for them to be aware of the positions.
Is that it?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask a free ball question.
Okay, we got a free ball.
That's all. Oh, no. Another free ball. Yeah, come on over here.
Hi. Okay. Hello. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Carol Skiba. I'm the current campus coordinator on ASPSU, and I'm here to ask a question that's kind of near and dear to my heart and also near and dear to my role. But I'd like to know, outside of my position, basically like how you plan on connecting further and fostering better communications and connections with other Oregon universities to get Oregon legislature that benefits our universities actually passed through office. I know that's a really big question and a very intense one to answer, but I do know the student emergency needs bill was denied this last year in the short term of office, or the short term voting session, and that basically lost $6 million to universities, lost textbook affordability, a lot of other things. I just kind of wanted to know how you planned on working with other universities to make sure things like that don't happen.
I'll say, I know Brady's on OSA, but a while ago, back when I was in ASPSU, we did a school lobby day, and I think those things are still happening, but we've got to connect even more and engage in trying to get students to lobby to the legislature. We had the opportunity in 2020, back when I was on ASPSU with Madeline, to go to the state legislature and lobby to the representatives and the senators in the state legislature, and we built relationships with some of those people as well. And I think that is probably the most important thing we can do, is start getting the student organizations to go to the state legislature and build the relationships with our elected officials so that the dialogue actually continues and they know exactly what our needs are. At one point, they wanted to have a task committee to send people down to the universities, and I don't think that ever actually happened. There was a walkout from the Republicans, in the legislature, and they weren't able to pass a lot of legislation. But if we can get them to just put together a task committee, just so they can come to the campuses and find the needs and talk to the students on campus, then we'll have a lot stronger channel of communication, and we'll be able to actually tell them exactly what our needs are, exactly what the students want. And at the end of the day, is you can't force their hand on anything, but it'll be a lot better in the long run with something like that.
All right. It's I
think it was Brady that.
Is it Brady next? I thought he had.
I mean,
Okay.
it was
My bad.
Nolan, Dave, me.
Oh, sorry.
me, but
I didn't know if you were second.
In the spirit of rebuttal,
rebuttaling.
you have more authority here.
Okay.
Rebuttal. I got back and forth.
Like I mentioned, and as Nolan mentioned, I'm on OSA. And one of the ways that we reach out to students to make sure that something like that, the emergency needs package, gets through, if it ever, or if and when it gets introduced again, is through the Oregon statewide survey, which is something that Nehemiah and I have been tabling for every Thursday in between Smith and Kramer. In this survey, we're hoping to get thousands of responses from all the campuses across of Oregon, and we've already gotten a good amount from PSU. I can't remember the exact number, but we encourage people to fill out this survey so that when we go to the legislature and we talk to the legislators, we say, there are thousands of students who care about this issue. They are the greatest voting bloc in America right now. If you don't listen to them, your job is on the line. and that's how I would do that.
People who are in the legislative are human. They like stories. You say something that gets that they can connect with, they can resonate with. Walking in and scaring somebody, going, "Well, you do this, we're gonna lose your job," isn't necessarily always the best approach to a person in office to get any empathy out of them and hope they want to change something. You want them to actually understand. First, we got to work with the university. Yes, our government affairs relation here could use some work, but that's the different story in itself. But you go out there with stories. You go out there with things that these people are going to connect with. You do research on your elected official, and you understand, what does this person do outside here? What did they do prior to here? And you find other students, you find people that you can get to talk to them and give them a story of something that they understand, they can relate with. That way, they're going to go talk to their friends, and their friends have influence. And you go out there with a more personalized, compassionate, empathetic story towards these people, and the possibility of getting something that actually want to be moved along and to be better will increase greatly. Because walking in and thousands of students are going to lose your job, nobody wants to listen to that. They want to hear stories. They want to hear empathy.
Like I mentioned before, I've been a gun violence prevention activist for the past 6 years, and one thing that has taught me is that legislators do not care about stories. If legislators cared about stories, AR-15s would be banned.
I think there's truth to both sides of that equation. Is that and not to just take the easy way, the middle ground, but in reality, is there are legislators. They're human, just like we are, and they appeal to stories. They appeal to pressure as well. And sometimes it's a mix of both that gets people to make a decision, which is why I really think if we can get task committees to actually come onto campuses and talk to students themselves, other than just reading something off of a piece of paper saying this is our needs, then we're much more likely to get them from those social relationships to say, I'm not going to let those students down. And that's what I've learned about just in the whole realm of politics is a lot of these people that are tied to organizations, it's not even a lot of the times their own opinions. It's the relationships that they have and them saying, I don't want to let these people that I've met down. I want to be able to help them out and get them what they need. So there's a little bit of both that you have to push, and it's just knowing when to push the right buttons at the right time.
Okay. I would also like to argue that coming up to legislators and saying we have these many people that are angry and you're going to lose your vote isn't really a threat. It is the story. That is the story. We are frustrated. We are angry. This is what we need. I think that's the story. That's the passion. And we're just backing it up with numbers. We're showing how many people this story relates to and applies to. Because again, we could come to them with the story of a single person, but that's never going to make the impact that we want it to, unfortunately. I wish it could, and I think it should, but that's just not the reality. And so I think when you have numbers behind that, when you have passion, when you can show that people are angry and they want a change, that's not a threat. That's just the reality, and that is our story.
I just want to point out that as much as I know we've done angry things and there's pressure that's put, there's a lot that is not working right now with the legislators. They're not particularly going in our directions all that much. So I think we need a course of action that brings them as humans to the table and to really be invested in that issue themselves to where they become part of it. I think that's what we need, is to where they emotionally become part of what's happening.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question, one last question? Okay, one more and then one audience question. So currently, none of you have the endorsement of any student media. How can you foster a commitment to communication when you have not made strong connections with the media of this university?
Well, I'll start out by saying that the other day, I put on a fake little press shirt and I ran around with Vanguard, helping them out, talking to folks and whatnot and building relationships. And I know some of the folks that are on the Vanguard and Sentinel and whatnot, and I like them all, whether they endorse me or not. I think they're awesome. But I have gone out of my way to try to build those relationships, and I continue those relationships. And we would get our message put out in the best way that we can.
I said it earlier, like we have a radio station. I hit it after him.
Oh, okay.
I did.
Are you using the same one? Or go ahead.
Anyways, I don't need long. We have. I mentioned earlier. I want to get communication out. That's my whole thing. Is I want people to get their information they have, so they can choose to do with it as they please. I want to use the radio station. Maybe use the Vanguard. I know that I'm not sure how often the issues come out, but something I would go learn about. I don't know much about it. I didn't really know it existed until I had the interview with them, and so it should be a big thing right there. Is that I didn't know they were really around until I had an interview with them. So maybe foster on all levels. Just get all the information out. I'm all about that.
I would say something that our slate has talked about a lot is how we're going to foster a connection with the Vanguard and student media going forward into the next year. And that's something that I really want to start fostering, is that connection with Vanguard. And I think one way that we can do that is by partnering more and having ASPSU go to the Vanguard on a weekly basis to report what we've been working on, maybe every 2 weeks. But having the Vanguard know about what ASPSU is doing is so important, so that students can stay informed about what their student government is doing. Also, I waved at Isaiah in the park yesterday, and JJ, I see him at the Cuba Solidarity table, and I always say hi to him. And so I try my best to reach out to the Vanguard people that I know, but definitely there's a connection that needs to be greater between ASPSU and the Vanguard, and all student media. But
nobody knows what you're from. No?
I'll say extra,
We know you will. Go ahead. You got it written down? Yeah. Okay, good.
Oh, Mitch got the best questions.
Hey, y'all. It's about what we were just talking about, the funding. And I go to the Board of Trustees meetings. I've gone to those this year, and I think it's really important that you go to each one, because how we're talking right now is important. We're talking about funding and how we can get them involved. And there was someone named Ben and Jim at the meeting, and they are the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. Mm-hmm. And they come and they give analytics from the state, and they tell us about funding, and they tell us how we're going to get funding and how they set it up. And they're telling the exact board and everyone there, hey, this is how you're going to get funding, and it tells them how the school is going to move and what we're going to be doing things if we want that funding. It did change to where it's now a state-funded school. It was that all the schools were together years ago. In about 2015, I heard this at the board again, they split and it became a state-funded thing. Now everyone's going to be competing, and they're going to be changing things that are morally, I think, need to be looked at to just get funding. Because if they do not do these things, they don't get funding. So the stories in these relationships, it's not that. And the person that will be gone, the person that's replacing them, is going to do the exact same job. It's not that. So if you get elected, will you show up to all the PSU boards and get to know them and get these answers and questions?
Of course, I am 100% committed to making sure that I or specific representative, if I'm not particularly able to make it on that day, will go to the Board of Trustees meetings. Like we mentioned earlier, Dave was part of the Central Washington University Board of Trustees, so he has experience being in those meetings and doing that sort of such. I don't have the same experience that he has, but I've been in meetings with folks before and been part of forums and all kinds of things like that. So we would make sure that there would be strong representation there, and that we would come back with detailed notes of the things that were happening and be able to bring those to the table of ASPSU.
all right. I would just like to say that I think going to the Board of Trustees meetings is something that ASPSU is, I think, required to do. I think we have a moment of time in the beginning of the meetings that we get to talk about what we've been up to and what we're hoping to accomplish, and also, any grievances we have with the board. But I was at the last Board of Trustees meeting representing ASPSU, and it is a scary stage up there. But I think the important thing that you brought up is the HEC and listening to them, and I think fostering a connection with the Higher Education Commission, right?
Higher Education Coordinating Committee.
Coordinating Commission. Yeah, the heck. All I know them as is the heck. But I think fostering a connection with them from ASPSU to learn more about what we can do to get that funding would be really, really important, because we're in a deficit right now, and there's no way to fix that unless we really do put in the work to, try and get as much funding as we possibly can.
Is it my turn now? Your turn. Okay, I will go to the meetings to hear the reports. That's all the meetings are good for. I hate to tell you, but they give reports of things that are already done and things that are already pretty much decided and voted on. Instead, I would want to go talk to the provost and different selections around campus in the president's office to get a better understanding of what's going on and what I can do to help. The board of trustees are great, and they serve lots of good things, and they're there as a voice of not only the students but also the campus and the community as a whole. But it's just reports, and some formal voting on a couple of issues, and sometimes the voting can be substantial. But if you're talking money, that report's already done. It's better to go and have a deeper, more personal conversation with people that are ahead of these boards, to go talk with a provost, to go speak with somebody inside the office and get a better understanding of where the money's coming from and what we can do to help with it. That's how I would look at it. As somebody who actually did do it for a whole year, I understand that. I hear everybody saying it, and it's a great idea, and the student numbers should always go and be represented, but you got to get underneath the covers to actually get in there and get some stuff to actually be changed. And that's how I would approach it.
And just to add, I'm going a little bit different direction, but as I used to be on the Portland State University Intercollegiate Athletics Board, and we go over a lot of budgeting. That was for sports in particular, and this school has budgeting issues in a lot of ways. I'll tell you what, is we make no money off of advertisements when it comes to sports. The Big Sky, every single other school in our conference makes an insane amount more money than we do. Just because we don't have a football stadium, we can't advertise. So there are limits to our ways of building revenue, which is why it's things like funding are important, because we don't have the same kind of infrastructure that some of those other schools have.
Thank you.
Thank you for the great questions, Mitch.
Yeah.
Here.
Should we do our last little? I think this is the last one. Oh. We don't have to. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that concludes our debates. So thank you guys for coming. You guys did great. Please don't forget to vote if you haven't already. You can search in your email, ASPSU Elections Ballot. You should find that. And then voting closes Wednesday, May 15th at 5 p.m. So that is your last chance. All right. Thank you, guys.